hands. Wasn't it sad when admiration went down? Smith's plan began to work as foretold. This weird music began to take hold. It sparked an interest in these forms of life underground from the norms, and soon millions of folk records were being sold. By the early 60s, Dylan, Joan Baez, Phil Oakes were all inspired by those old folks. Then one strange folk band downtown, called the Holy Modal Rounders, began to make it more anarchistic with weird voices and drug jokes. Mom's out there, switching in the kitchen, and Dad's in the living room, grousing out a bitch, and I'm out here, kicking the gong for euphoria, euphoria. When your mind starts wheeling and walking, your inside voice starts squealing and squawking, floating around on a belladonna cloud, singing euphoria. In 1965, the Holy Modal Rounders met some intellectual thugs on East 10th Street who called themselves the Fugs. The Fugs were recorded by Harry Smith, playing the punkiest songs yet to exist. Lo-fi, noisy stuff about poetry, sex, and drugs. I don't have a bedtime, I don't need to come, for I have become an amphetamine bum. If you don't like sleeping and don't want to screw, then you should take lots of amphetamine too. In 1966, the Fugs signed to New York label ESP. The same label put out a band called The Gods, spelled with a Z. The Gods accomplished the feat of making even the Fugs' music sound sweet, with the least musical folk punk racket in history. Meow! Meow! Just like the streets of Tokyo. Far from the West Coast hippie scene, New York music was not mainstream. It was intellectual, but noisy and hectic. And then the Velvet Underground went electric and made folk punk more beautiful and more extreme. I'm waiting for the man. $26 in my hand. Up to Lexington, 125. Feel sick and dirty, more dead than alive. I'm waiting for the man. Nothing could stop New York's strange folk punk tide. In 1968 came David Peel and the Lower East Side. They recorded an album out in the street, screaming and sloppy. Then they were signed and it sold almost 1 million copies, with songs like I Like Marijuana and Up Against the Wall, Motherfucker inside. Mother, where is my father? Where is my brother? They're at war. They're at war. You made them join the dirty U.S. Army. You told them all the filthy white lie. You gave them all the bullshit and baloney. Now my brother and my father gonna have to die. In 1970, Lenny Kaye was an East Side guitarist who began playing music with an East Side poet named Patti Smith, who would use it to mix her wild poetry with simple rock stuff, like the Fugs in a way, but less rough. A postmodern way to take high art and low art and fuse it. His head split open, his eyes were just like two red opals, and his ship split open. I said, oh, I'm going up, 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 up. Oh, and Jesus died for somebody's sins, but not mine. Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. 1972 or 73 is around when the New York Dolls start, mixing trash and drag fashion with the rock and roll heart. The Johnny Thunders, David Johansen sound mixed the old-style simple rock with the new New York underground, and sort of defined the moment when stupid on purpose became the new smart. Yeah, yeah, yeah! Yeah, yeah, yeah! We'll be the ballerina on a springtime afternoon. Change on his old man, howling at the moon. About that personality crisis, you got it while it was hot. It's always hot, you know that frustration and heartache is what you got. And the Lower East Side of New York began with spiked hair and ripped jeans worn by a poet named Richard Hell. Hell was in television, the Neon Boys, the Heartbreakers, the Voidoids, and he wrote the song that gave the new 70s punk generation its first anthem yell. I was screaming, get me out of here, before I was even born. It's such a gamble when you get a fist. It's fascinating to observe what the mirror does, but when I die, it's for the wall that I set a place. Well, I belong to the blank generation, and I can take it or leave it each time. Well, I belong to the generation, but I can take it or leave it each time. 75, CBGB start having punk shows with television, Patti Smith and the Ramones. 76, punk fanzine begins, then the whole thing moved to England. England stole all the credit, and that's how it goes. The end.